getting to head back to Australia once again. How are you feeling about being able to head back down under after such a long time?
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah, very very excited. It's good, it's a long way to go to play music, but we love it, and can't wait. Basically, we're looking forward to it. It's always been great people that we meet in Australia, and great crowds. So last time we went there, it was we just had a great time. So very much looking forward to it, to be honest.
What's it been like for you guys being back out on the road after the pandemic? Because, of course, I'm in one of the world's most lockdown cities here in Melbourne during that time. But What's it been like for you being back out on the road? And what was that time like during the pandemic when you couldn't get out and do shows?
Yeah, I mean, it's been, we started this year with the sort of Nowhere tour. And it was early in January, and really that was like the first times that we played live shows to a live audience, if you will.
Yeah.
And there was something of the epiphany about it all. Really, how much a percentage of that was playing Nowhere in full and reconnecting with that sort of vitality and energy and the innocence of those songs that we kind of, and the way that we played them back in the day, and how much of it was just the fact of actually being in a venue again with a crowd who have also missed live music. They've also had a journey of their own. They've been kept away from feeling music in such a sort of visceral way. So for both band and audience, it was a very sort of therapeutic experience. I think both of us were benefiting from us being there and creating something sort of mutually in the moment. So there was a real celebration about those shows, and even though it's a sort of 30th year anniversary, it was actually, there was something really sort of fresh about it, and it was a very much a sort of sort of symbiotic, experience. Yeah. We were both getting as much out of it as each other. Yeah.
Like for me myself, how I felt was I realized that I've been going to shows ever since I was 13, and I'm in my 40s now, and I'd started to take live music for granted because you thought it would never get taken away, and then when it got taken away for 2 years,
absolutely,
you suddenly realize never take it for granted again.
Exactly. Certainly never take it for granted, and you realise how much you sort of almost need it to keep you, how much mental health it can contribute to positive mental health, and good, how good it is for us all, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely. The going to answer the second part of your question and going back the other way, definitely those 2 years in lockdown were really hard because there's a disconnect from the audience and a disconnect from, as a musician, it's never really been questioned that you do what you do with other people very close by. So that's never really been questioned throughout history, but then suddenly to be a musician you can only do it on your own, via a screen with other people or something like that. So that was very weird and a tough one to deal with.
Yeah.
Although, I did manage to do that sort of the drumathon thing when I played drums for 12 hours, and that was a great way of connecting with people.
What was that like? Like, that must have been so tiring playing drums for 12 hours non-stop.
It was, weirdly, it wasn't so bad as I thought it would be, and it was more the preparation, all the time that's spent trying to get the technology working and making all the backing tracks and all that kind of stuff. But actually, in the end, the actual playing bit was easy, and it kind of, it went really quickly. I started it, and then I suddenly realised, wow, I'm halfway through. Only 6 hours to go. So that was it wasn't too bad in the end. But that was and the band Ride did a stream as well. We did one stream, which was tricky and had its own technical issues, but we did find a way of connecting with our audience in in the kind of lockdown and in the pandemic, and that was I'm really glad we tried to do those things like the streaming gig.
Yeah. Well, as you mentioned about going back and playing Nowhere in full, did that idea come about during the pandemic? Was it something that you guys all talked about during that time, or was this something that you guys had been planning for a while?
Well, with these things, we did in 2015. I think it was the 25th anniversary of Nowhere, and we ended up doing a few shows at the end of our reunion tour, really, wasn't it? It was 2015 was when we did all the kind of reunion shows. The band got back together, and we were only meant to play. We only agreed to about 2 weeks worth of shows. And in the end, they just kept adding shows and more shows, and we spent the whole year touring. And at the end of that year, we were going to do some shows with, I think it was Thurston Moore, and basically it sort of got cancelled. And so we decided as a way of salvaging it, we decided that we might just sort of highlight the fact that it was the 25th anniversary of Nowhere, and so we did some Nowhere shows at the end of that. But the only problem was it was just very last minute, short notice, and a little bit thrown together, and we didn't have a chance to tour anywhere other than the UK. So when it came up to the 30th anniversary, we were definitely up for doing it properly, but obviously there was this big pandemic happening, so we couldn't do it. We couldn't actually do it in the 30th year, and so we had to wait until the nearest point when we could, and that was actually the beginning of this year. So it's a delayed anniversary.
Yeah. Does it feel like 30 years for you, or does it feel like yesterday when the album first came out?
At the start of it, it felt like a long, long time ago. It felt like, although we play some of those songs live a lot, we play them at almost every gig sometimes. But to actually revisit the album as a whole felt like a long way back, if you see what I mean. But
yeah.
Once we started rehearsing and playing the songs live, and then just performing them every night and chatting to people and meeting the audiences and talking to them about their experiences, it actually the time gap seemed to disappear, and they actually felt really quite relevant, and some of the songs just seemed so much stronger than you could have ever imagined. I'm thinking in the set, songs like Decay have really, really come out as being, just very, I don't want to say bangers, but it's just, a song that we hardly ever played live, and that was really almost an album track, has become a real a highlight of the set, actually, sort of like a song like Decay and Paralysed as well. So actually, suddenly there was this sort of more contemporary relevance that came from all the songs, and as I say, of hearing people's experiences. So that kind of wiped away the gap, and actually now, Nowhere does feel a lot closer than it did before.
Yeah. I was going to ask that, were there any tracks that you'd never played live before? Because we've had a few Australian bands over the last few years that have played 20 and 25th anniversary shows for different albums, and they said when they went back and looked at the album, they went, crap, we actually never played some of these tracks live.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I think Kaleidoscope was an album track that was written and recorded in the studio. I don't think we ever played that live. I don't think we played Decay live. I don't think so. I'm trying to think. I think there are certainly a lot more of that going with the Going Blank Again play album that we did. Basically when we were playing that live, there was a lot of tracks on there that we hadn't played live before. But yeah, for Nowhere, I think it was mainly Kaleidoscope. Let's say Kaleidoscope and Decay. So we had to get our heads around those. And Kaleidoscope is a monster, really, to get to play. Sort of almost listening back to it, just sort of you sort of think, I don't even remember doing this. I don't know how we did this, but we did. It's a really sort of high energy mod, power pop, shoegaze burst of energy. Really, it's just really cool, and it took quite a lot to get our heads around that one.
What's it like also going back and revisiting tracks? Like, does it take you back to the emotions that you were feeling at that time when tracks were written and things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a I've felt this quite closely. I don't know if it's just the way that I don't know if it's me or if it's a drummer thing, but you have to. For me, the drummer has to connect with the sort of the emotion of the song, the energy of the song, that maybe some of the psychology of the song to make it really come across well. And certainly at the time, we were all so close as a band that we sort of almost we were a very close bunch of lads, and we felt each other's pain in some ways, or maybe it was just me, but basically I felt like I would be a channel for whoever the writer was, for their grief or anger or angst or excitement. And so that came back again, doing it, playing these live and rehearsing them, and actually it's sort of you're coming back to it, but it feels like it's I don't this time. Back in the day, you almost couldn't separate yourself from it. I was so involved in the music and so passionately involved in our sound as a band that you almost couldn't separate it from real life. Whereas now it's different. I've moved on, I've grown up, I've got family of my own, etc., etc. So it's almost like I've got a hand on that the sort of the veil over those experiences. On the hand is on the kind of the sort of borderline of all of that, but I still got the other part of me rooted firmly into that today and now and the present. So it's a really interesting sort of balance to find and an interesting line to tread. I think those songs you have to sort of connect with some form of emotion, because that's what the album is. That's how it was written. It was for teenagers going through existential grief, and it's all still very quite sort of poignant and powerful now. So yeah, I think you have to connect with a little bit, and I certainly found it inspiring, and I found it a resource of energy rather than maybe it wasn't a drain. It was a more of a resource of energy for to play live. So it was a bit of both.
Now, when I read how this album has been described over the years, Rolling Stone called it a masterpiece. It made the 1001 albums you must hear before you die. Did it feel special to you guys at the time when you were writing it? Was there like something there that just felt like we're working on something really special right now?
For me, I hate to. Maybe I'm the wrong person to ask, but I was never. I didn't really feel anything after it was done. It was because it was so involved in the making of it and the recording of it and the intensity of it all and the sort of the complexity of everything that was going on at the time. We weren't in a brilliant place at the time in some ways, and actually the album was written around some pretty dark themes, although there are a lot of fantastically optimistic moments too. So once it was done, I couldn't really think about it, and I didn't for many years. It's only really looking back now that I can appreciate some of the artistry and the creativity and actually some of the the lyrical aspects, and actually now with the passage of time I can look back and think actually that's really good, because it's captured something of us all playing live together. That was Nowhere was very much an album that we captured it, we recorded it live, if you see what I mean. There wasn't much studio craft going on in there. It was the sound of us four playing, and actually there's some really magical moments. So I think that maybe it's like the collection of songs, but they somehow seem to create a kind of narrative, and maybe that's it, or maybe that's just the different themes that we were visiting at the time. But I can see it works. It really does work as a whole and as a collection of songs. So I'm really proud of it now.
Definitely. Now, you mentioned before that you've got fond memories of coming to Australia. Is there anything that you're hoping to do while you're here away from the stage?
Well, I mean, this time round, the tour is so back to back. There isn't really much time when we came last time, we had sort of this amazing thing called a day off
Yeah.
here and there, and I went surfing, and I got to meet up with some of my family out there, and then there's always lots of great things to do. In any of the cities we visited, but this time it's going to be very business like. So I don't think we've got any days off. It's just traveling, and so I'm not really sure what I can fit in, but I'm hoping to visit some of my family, and anything I can do with any spare time, I'll try and get out and get in the sun and just sort of soak up the vibes of being in such a great place.
Definitely. Well, mate, I know we are running out of time very, very quickly. So to finish up, what would you like to say to all of your Aussie fans before you come here for this amazing tour?
I'd say, do your homework, listen to the album, and then bring your experiences and celebrate with us in the moment as we play it live for you in the same room. And that hopefully we'll all be celebrating the end of lockdown, just celebrating creating that moment together. Do you know what I mean?
Definitely.